If there's any book you should be reading if you are fascinated by the behind the scenes of the Halo television show, to me, it's book one of the Kilo 5 trilogy known as Glasslands, written by Karen Traviss, who, boy, did people pan Karen Traviss really bad. I think she got a really bum rap. She did some very controversial things in the book. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Karen Traviss is no stranger to video game adaptation. She wrote the Gears of War 3, and she also wrote a lot of books that flesh out the world of the Gears universe as well. So when she came over to assist in the Halo universe, I think a lot of us, myself included, were very excited because it's like, wow, we have a vet who kind of understands, you know, those hero moments in a video game and can translate them well into a novel. I think she did a phenomenal job. I'm highly recommending this book to anybody who hasn't read it. A lot of people did not like the bastardization or the just dehumanizing of Catherine Halsey. And there's a significant amount of that in this book. I liked it. I thought it all made sense, and I'm going to talk to you guys about it at length today. I will be looking over here. I know the camera's here. I'll be looking over here because I have my other screen set up with some notes. There's a lot that goes on in the story, and I want to frame it well for you guys. I encourage you to go read it. Really, I do. I'm going to give you guys some of my thoughts and some of the keynotes and some review opinions on it. You should read it for yourself, though. You really, really should. It's a very simple, fun, quick read, but it does get heavy. So where does this take place in the timeline? Okay, this takes place in 2553 at the end of the Human Covenant War. If you only play the video games, to you the war ended when the Master Chief and the Arbiter allied and destroyed more Halo Ring, right? Another Halo Ring gets blown up again. Yay. Remember the ship gets severed in half. Arbiter makes it through the portal. Chief does not. Wake me when you need me. He's gone. For all intents and purposes, he has died. Humanity has lost their hero. They don't know he's dead. But there's a lot that goes on in between that this book, or that, you know, if you only played the games, you wouldn't know about. Particularly the rise and fall of the SPARTAN-III program, which was essentially children soldiers who had been orphaned from the Covenant. Basically, if their planet was glass, they took all these kids, put them in very basic power armor, and sent them on suicide missions. It was almost a 100% mortality rate. That's how horrifying this was. But it was just like, hey, kids, you want to get revenge? Everybody just run at this thing and try to blow it up. They were successful, but obviously at a large cost. So we lost the Spartan-IIs in all intents and purposes. We lost the Spartan-IIIs. And a small group of the Spartan-IIIs, which I'm not going to get into here because it's not really that relevant to the story. Well, part of it is, but for what the point I'm trying to make across isn't that relevant to the story. They get trapped in a shield, like the slip space world, known as Onyx. There's a book called The Ghosts of Onyx, which is a direct prequel to this. Wouldn't necessarily it's required reading. It probably would help significantly to know the names and faces, but they do a good enough job summarizing that in here. All you need to know is that Catherine Halsey was part of that group, along with the remnants of the blue team. And they are considered dead as well. So from the UNSC perspective, the hero of the war, John, Sierra 117, MIA. Catherine Halsey, considered MIA. Fred, Linda Kelly, MIA. On the Covenant side, major decentralization. Imagine their world is completely rocked. These religious figures that they put all of their energy and time and feeling and dedication in turned out to be a lie. The idea of the great journey was a lie. The great schism where they fought internally was starting to get done. You had this war hero in the Arbiter, who some people looked up to, some people didn't. Their whole culture is in wild turmoil as well. And the point of this book, Glasslands, was the UNSC putting together a group of people led by a former Spartan-II, who kind of washed out, essentially. Saren Osman, very, very important character. She, under Admiral Parangoski, who the same Admiral Parangoski that we see in the Halo television show, although a different rendition. This is an old, frail white lady who's in her late 90s. Not the Parangoski we see in the television show, but same intentions. Always looking 5 steps ahead. Office of Naval Intelligence, very, very important role. They put together this group known as the Kilo 5, which consists of 3 ODSTs, a SPARTAN-II named Naomi, and a linguist who is very well versed in the lore and in understanding the values and the beliefs of the Covenant in saying Helios, right? This group of people are known as the Kilo 5, even though there's 6 of them. And their mission is to continue to decentralize and to break down the Covenant via inflicting internal civil wars and strife to make sure that the UNSC has time to rebuild in the event a ceasefire does not hold. Very, very interesting stuff here. They sell weapons to different factions of the Covenant. They implant rumors and lies. They spy on them to make sure that the Arbiter is not successful in reunifying the group, that they continue infighting, which buys the UNSC time to figure out a way to build up their forces in the unlikely event, or maybe likely, honestly, that the ceasefire does not hold. If you're a fan of the Halo universe, you know the ceasefire does hold, but they didn't know this at the time. And that's where this story gets so interesting, is you're starting to see the inside thoughts of the Covenant kind of working and how their social structures work. We don't really have seen any of that until this book is written. Very interesting. From the UNSC perspective, as I said, they've lost all their major war heroes. There's a lot of struggling that goes on there. So why am I talking about Glasslands now? Is it because I like talking about Halo? Well, yeah, it is. But why this book specifically? It's because if you've been watching the Halo television show, which thankfully is gaining a lot of traction and fandom, you know that towards the middle of episode 6, Catherine Halsey is essentially put on trial for her involvement in the Spartan-II program. We understand how the Spartan-IIs come to be via these defectives, flash clones that are meant to die, and how these kids were taken away and trained up. Now, that part isn't so unique. We kind of knew about that, but we never get to see or hear what Catherine Halsey really thinks about it. And this book does a phenomenal job of really making her have self-guilt, because it's told from the eyes of the Kilo 5 team, specifically 2 of the ODSTs, Vaz and Mal. Vaz and Mal, who don't know anything about the Spartan program other than they're super soldiers, don't really understand how or why. They're aided with an artificial intelligence known as BB, the Black Box, who's a very witty AI. He's kind of overseen, or she, I think he's kind of associated as a man. You know, AI can kind of choose, which is interesting. You know, Cortana was a clone of Halsey, so I guess that's not a good example. But my point is, BB and Saren Osman are kind of like, listen, we're going to tell you guys everything because we need to make sure that we're all on the same page. No secrets amongst us. Since Catherine Halsey is considered dead, her journals and her life work is now being dissected by the masses. A lot of it's become declassified. So we're in a great position because now we're going to basically open the floodgates. And you as the reader are taken on a journey of understanding all of this through these eyes of these ODSTs. And man, they really take this news hard. Understanding exactly what I said about the flash clones and the children and the punishment, and understanding what's going on with Halsey. And that's really the setup for the book. From this point forward, I will be getting into some spoilers. So if you haven't yet figured out you need to go read this, go do it. Really go do it. I think you're going to like it. But I just want to say that in case you don't want it to be spoiled. Okay? So you've been warned. Okay? Boo, spoilers. All right? There's your special graphical effects. The key takeaway from this book is the UNSC is a bunch of jerks. And in a good way this time. Really trying to decentralize, turning Covenant against each other. We're introduced to Jul 'Mdama, who plays a minor role at the beginning of Halo 5 as he's murked very quickly on. And we're met with some of the other key players in these houses. We understand how the Covenant is basically assembled, where their children are fatherless because they want everyone to grow up as a strong warrior, a very warlike race. They're trying to get together, and this small group has realized the Arbiter needs to go. They want to go back to fighting the UNSC. They feel alive on the battlefield. They don't agree in the ceasefire. They begin a plot to kill the Arbiter, which, as of book 1, doesn't really gain much traction, unfortunately. As I did mention earlier, this is the first of a trilogy, so there's obviously more. But from the sake of just this book and understanding everything, the more interesting thing, though, is Catherine Halsey stuck in her own mind, stuck on the shield world Onyx, and her reluctance and slow understanding of what she's done, and basically this selfless sacrifice that she feels she's made, and basically pushing away her child and pushing away everything she's ever loved because she thinks she is the key to the evolution of the human race. She thinks she is the key to saving the world and to pushing the bounds of ethics in a way that no one else will. She's willing to be the demon. It's funny, John, her child, is the demon. She's really the demon. And she talks a lot about her understanding and processing all of this. And it's cool to see the two sides kind of working this conflict out. On one hand, the ODSTs being embedded with Naomi, a Spartan, really start to understand how the Spartans put on their armor and what kind of training they go through. And it's a really good crash course for them. But it isn't until later when they actually get to understand the records and BB releases the records of Naomi and her life, her specific life, do they understand just how brutal this program was and how many lives it destroyed. And they really vilify Halsey as this just demonic person. A lot of people felt that Karen Travis's writing took it too far. I don't think she took it far enough. Yes, without Catherine Halsey, the Spartan program would not exist. The fighting in the Civil War leading up to the major Covenant War would probably have ended in disaster, and most likely humanity would have been wiped out because the Covenant were just too powerful and too fast. It really was the Spartan-IIs that pushed back and saved humanity from that war. And you get bits and pieces of that in the television show, obviously, when you see the Spartans doing superhuman feats and saving tons of lives almost effortlessly. Halsey, obviously no stranger to how this happened, but finally starting to come to terms with it. Where it really picks up, interestingly enough, in the book is kind of at the very end, when the shield world is revealed to everyone. We get a lot of great technology that's going to advance the UNSC, exactly what they needed. I don't want to get in the weeds about what the shield world was and the Forerunners and stuff. Just understand this technology was uncovered there. Catherine Halsey pops out. Hey, here I am. I'm alive and well. And the immediate response by Oni is to arrest her on war crimes and basically put her... Someone is going to have to take the fall for the Spartan-II program. And, we have to put a name to this crime, and it's going to be Catherine Halsey. There's some phenomenal storytelling in there as Oni basically, through this Kilo 5 program, this group of the ODSTs and stuff, arrest Catherine Halsey in front of the blue team. And watching and understanding Naomi process all of this and getting to hear BB explain Naomi's records. When she was abducted as a child, her mother committed suicide. Her father became a conspiracy theorist, which we'll play into more in the following books. But what a brutal end to her family's lineage. and her direct involvement with things, and her even not wanting to know the truth of her own life, asking a friend, like, read this to me and tell me if it's something I want to know about. It's brutal. It's hard. And hearing Catherine Halsey's trying to explain why she did what she did. There's a really big showdown at the end with Admiral Perengoski, who was familiar with the Spartan-II program, but doesn't have that self-righteous view that Halsey does. That, not saying that either of them are good, but really the self-righteous view of understanding their involvement in the Spartan-II program and what they did to these poor children. Very fascinating stuff, and they just ever so briefly touched on it in episode 6 of Halo, which really spurred me to want to even talk about this. But if you're interested in understanding some of the not so pretty things of the war, and if you're really curious about some of the training regiment that the Spartan-IIs went through and just how brutal and violent it was, and Catherine Halsey's almost mental detachment from it until being forced into actually seeing it again and coming to terms with it, this is definitely the book for you. So I think Halo Glasslands is phenomenal. The whole trilogy is phenomenal as well, but Glasslands in particular really stands out as a book to me that has really good story threads of wrapping up Halo 3. Even that infamous scene on the town of Voy when Hood stands there and, there's 117 scrawled on the back, those who entered the Howling Dark. And remember that speech? He shakes the Arbiter's hand. That's in the book. They kind of talk around that. It really does bookend the Halo journey, and really, I think, does a phenomenal job of setting up for like 343 taking over. So this book came at a pivotal time as well. But do yourself a favor and check it out, okay? I'll post a link to the Amazon store page in the description below. But that's it for this week's data dump on Halo. There's going to be more, okay? There's going to be more. That's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.